My name is Julian Hart, and for the better part of 8 years, I've been a ghost in my own marriage. Not because I was absent, not because I didn't care, because invisibility was the role I was cast in. And for a long time, I played it well. To most of my wife's world, I was Myra's husband, a vague accessory to her fast-moving life. At events, her co-workers barely acknowledged me beyond a polite nod or a distracted handshake. Her friends smiled past me. Her assistants never bothered to learn my name. Myra never corrected them, and I never asked her to. That was fine with me. I didn't need the spotlight. I never cared about the glitz or being anyone's talking point. I preferred quiet corners and real conversations, the kind you only get when no one's watching you. Silence had always been my advantage. It gave me space to observe, to understand, to plan. Myra, on the other hand, thrived in noise. She moved through the world like a headline. Loud, polished, impossible to ignore. That was part of what drew me to her in the beginning. Her energy, her drive, her refusal to be anything less than formidable. When she landed the senior executive role at Darlington Group, a tech firm that called itself a revolution in motion, she treated it like a crowning achievement. And it was in many ways. Myra had fought tooth and nail for that position, for the corner office, the staff that answered to her every need, the parking space with her name on it. She made it. At least that's what she told herself. But here's what she didn't tell anyone. I was the one who funded Darlington's seed round. 8 years ago, when Myra was just a manager at a mid-tier agency, and the founders of Darlington were just two scrappy coders with a dream and a broken MacBook, I saw something in their pitch that made sense. I cut a check, a big one, quietly. I never asked for a seat on the board. I didn't want headlines. I just wanted to build. Myra never knew how deep my involvement went. She thought I was in consulting. That's the word she used when people asked what I did. "Oh, Julian, he's in consulting," she'd say with a dismissive smile, the same one she used when she corrected a waiter or shut down a subordinate in meetings. She didn't want me to be part of her brand. My existence had to be digestible, neatly packaged, safe. I let her have that for a long time because love, at least the kind I believed in, wasn't about needing credit. It was about seeing someone win and knowing you helped them rise, even if no one else knew it. But something changed over the years. Not in the company. In her, Myra began curating her image like a product launch. Her Instagram became a highlight reel of brunches, panels, and power moves. Her captions read like TED Talk scripts. Never dim your light for someone else's comfort. If they don't clap when you win, let them go. She started referring to our shared milestones as her sacrifices. She told stories that made her the hero, and I was either the silent supporter or not mentioned at all. I try not to care. I told myself the image wasn't the person that late at night when it was just us and the world was quiet. She'd still reach for my hand in bed. She'd still whisper good night. And that meant something, didn't it? But the silence I once cherished started to feel more like a rasher. Not just in public, but at home too. The decisions Myra once made with me became announcements. We're going to Cabo next month for the Founders Retreat. I RSVP'd us for the gala. I told them you might help with setup. I was no longer part of the plan. I was background set dressing, a placeholder in a story that no longer needed me until the invitation came. It was delivered by courier. Thick envelope sealed with Darlington's embossed gold logo. Myra left it on the kitchen counter without a word, nestled beneath a pile of design magazines and catalogs. Like I wouldn't notice it, like it wasn't meant for me. I picked it up anyway. Darlington Group Quarterly Gala celebrating legacy and leadership. She hadn't mentioned it. No save the date, no discussion, just silence. I waited until dinner to bring it up. She was slicing into her salmon, glass of wine half gone. "Gala next Friday?" I asked. She barely looked up. "Yeah, you don't have to come if you're busy." I set my fork down. I wasn't invited, was I? Mira hesitated. A flash of guilt flickered in her eyes. Too quick for anyone else to catch. But I'd studied her long enough to know. "I mean, technically, +1s are allowed," she said. "But it's mostly work networking. You'd be bored." "Is that why you didn't mention it?" She sighed as if I was the problem. "Julian, it's just not your world. You don't even like those events." She was right. I didn't like being paraded. But that wasn't the point. That night, I sat in my home office looking over the shareholder documents I'd kept locked away all these years. I ran my fingers over the Darlington logo, the signatures that gave me quiet power. I had always chosen to stay in the background, but that didn't mean I belonged there. So I pulled out my tuxedo. I RSVP'd myself as a guest. And for the first time in 8 years, I decided to step into the room. Not as Myra's husband, not as a catering volunteer, not as a shadow, as Julian Hart, the man who built it all while no one was watching. And this time, they were going to see me. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the bedroom, adjusting the cuffs of my black dress shirt. When Mira walked in, she gave me a once-over with eyes that flickered somewhere between surprise and calculation. She hadn't expected me to dress up. I could tell by the way her gaze lingered slightly too long, like she was trying to decide whether to say something nice or pivot to criticism. "You're actually coming," she said flatly, like the idea had only just become real to her. "I said I was," I replied, reaching for the jacket that matched the deep charcoal slacks I'd laid out earlier. "You never withdrew the +1, so I figured I'd claim my spot." She folded her arms and leaned against the doorframe, her expression unreadable. "Well, don't say I didn't warn you. It's not going to be your kind of crowd." "What kind is that?" I asked, looking her straight in the eye. "The kind that talks in acronyms and IPOs. The kind that works 80-hour weeks and takes conference calls during dinner," she said, her tone now clipped. "You don't need to prove anything." I smiled then, not because of what she said, but because she had no idea that her words confirmed everything I'd suspected. She didn't just want me out of the room, she wanted me out of the picture. And that made me even more certain I needed to show up. The gala was at the Hudson Glass House, a venue Mira had always gushed about. She once said if she had known about it earlier, she would have held our wedding there. I remember nodding at the time, sipping my drink, trying not to flinch at the way she erased the place we actually got married. Her words, a casual rewrite of history. The venue was all polished chrome and floor-to-ceiling windows. The skyline glimmered behind clusters of sharply dressed professionals. Everyone had perfect posture and expensive cologne. Mira moved through them like she belonged, air-kissing, laughing lightly. Her voice a smooth current in the high tide of networking chatter. She didn't introduce me. Not once. At first, I hung back, took in the crowd. I wasn't trying to cause a scene. I wasn't ready to. Not yet. I just wanted to see how deep this theater ran. And Mira, she played her role flawlessly. About 20 minutes in, she looped back to me with a small smirk and said, "Come with me for a sec." I followed her toward a curtained-off hallway. She handed me something folded, dark and fabric. I opened it. A vest with the Darlington logo embroidered on the chest. "What's this?" "You said you wanted to come," she said sweetly, brushing non-existent linen off my lapel. "So, help out. Just pour drinks or something. At least you'll have something to do." My jaw tensed. I looked down at the vest, then up at her. She wasn't joking. Her smile was tight and smug, like she just turned me into an obedient prop in her show. Like she'd found the perfect way to remind me who the night really belonged to. "Seriously, it's either that or sit around awkwardly all night," she said, stepping back and glancing around to make sure no one important saw this moment. "Just blend in." I took the vest, not because I accepted it, but because I knew what was coming, and I wanted to let her believe she was winning. Just a little longer. I made my way to the bar. The real staff looked at me with some confusion, but I nodded politely and started pouring. Red wine, white wine, a few of the basic cocktails. I knew how to handle a shaker. Years ago, I used to bartend while building my first investment fund. I never forgot the rhythm of it. Ice, pour, stir, smile. Someone spilled a bit of their drink near the corner, and I went over to help mop it. That's when I met Kindra, Myra's work bestie, a sharp-cheeked woman with a voice that could slice through glass. "Oh my God, you're Myra's husband, right?" she said, laughing as I wiped near her shoes. "She said you were in, what was it, consulting? Something like that," I replied, keeping my tone pleasant. "Well, this is adorable," she chuckled, pointing to my vest. "You're really committed to whatever this is." Someone behind her, one of the younger software architects, I think, snorted. "Myra's husband is serving drinks now. Damn. Power couple in reverse." I smiled. I actually smiled because their laughter meant nothing. It was shallow, fleeting, and none of them knew who I was yet. I returned to the bar, kept pouring, kept watching. Every so often, I'd glance over at Mira. She never looked back. She was too busy dazzling. Her boss, Gregory Lang, stood beside her, laughing in that fake, cordial way executives do when their futures depend on keeping the right people happy. She leaned into him, whispering something in his ear. They both laughed. I caught enough to know I was the punchline. "Honestly," she whispered, not realizing I was close enough to hear, "he's lucky to be invited. He doesn't understand my world." Gregory nodded. "As long as he keeps you happy." I didn't flinch, not outwardly. But inside, the fuse had officially been lit. I poured another glass, handed it off, and looked out at the sea of curated perfection. She'd gone so far out of her way to make me invisible, and in doing so had forgotten the first rule of power. The quiet ones, the ones you underestimate. They're the ones who always know where the exits are in the locks. I stayed behind that bar longer than I needed to. Partly to keep up the illusion, partly because I liked watching the performance unravel without them knowing a thing. I chatted with guests. I let them assume. I kept pouring. Then I checked my watch. It was almost time for the big announcement Mira had been hinting at for weeks. Something about new directions and deep gratitude for their success. And in that moment, I knew exactly how I'd reclaim every inch of space she tried to shrink me out of. I didn't need revenge. I needed revelation. They would all know my name. And not because Mira handed it to them. Because I was about to take back everything with a smile and a microphone. The night swelled around us like a carefully tuned orchestra. The clink of champagne flutes, the muffled beats of background jazz, the occasional ripple of laughter over industry jargon and 6F figureur deals. I stood behind the bar, vest still on, hands still moving. If anyone had looked closely, they would have seen how steady they were. I wasn't angry. I wasn't nervous. I was patient, controlled. I'd waited years to be underestimated this thoroughly, to be hidden in plain sight while the people around me performed their self-importance with choreographed precision. At exactly 8:45 p.m., Mira took the stage. Spotlight shifted and landed on her like she was born for them. She walked up to the podium in a sleek metallic dress, silver with structured shoulders, bold and blinding. People clapped, some even whistled. She smiled that perfect rehearsed smile, the one that made her look grateful without seeming soft. She tapped the mic twice. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here tonight as we celebrate the incredible growth, innovation, and impact we've made at Darlington Group over the last quarter. A few cheers rose from the back. Someone yelled, "Queen Mirror!" and a wave of laughter followed. She basted in it, let the praise settle around her like perfume. Then she launched into her speech. She spoke of long nights, strategic partnerships, sleepless weekends, sacrifice. She name-dropped board members, gave shallow praise to mid-level directors. She talked about Darlington as if she had built it brick by brick with her own bare hands and some divine spark of genius. What she didn't mention, not once, was me. Not the investor who took the risk when Darlington was just a slide deck and a dream. Not the man who funded its survival through 3 near failures and 1 painful restructure. Not the partner who stood quietly in the background while she used the front row. I leaned against the side of the bar, arms folded, listening as she said, "Success doesn't happen in silence. It happens in boldness, in courage, in vision." That one stung, but I didn't let it show. The applause swelled as she raised her glass. To all the visionaries in the room, thank you for building this future with me. She toasted the crowd. People mirrored her, clinking glasses with excitement and entitlement. I took a sip from a bottle of water behind the bar. Mira stepped off the stage, clearly pleased with herself. She made her way toward Gregory Lang, her boss, her mentor, and if the rumors were even half true, her biggest fan. I noticed the way she leaned in again, the way her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, just loud enough for those close by to hear, including me. "Honestly," she said with a chuckle, "he's lucky to be invited. He doesn't understand my world." Gregory, smug and pink-faced, gave a knowing nod. "As long as he keeps you happy." And then Mira turned her head. She saw me. For just a second, her eyes met mine, and in that instant, I saw something flicker in her expression. It wasn't guilt. No, she'd left that emotion behind a long time ago. It was discomfort. The cold realization that I'd hurt her, that I wasn't as far away or as checked out as she'd hoped. But she didn't flinch. She just gave me a half smile. The kind people give their dorm when they forget the name. I smiled back, full confident. The kind of smile that says, "You just stepped into my office." Gregory turned to raise a glass in my direction. "To the man of the hour," he said jokingly, clearly not realizing what he was implying. "Nice purse tonight." A few people laughed. Mira laughed too, tight-lipped and sharp. "Let's hope he sticks to cocktails and not quarterly reports," she added, just loud enough to sting. I nodded once, said nothing. Let it sit. It was important they stayed this unaware. The greater the performance, the greater the shock. A younger guy, probably from marketing, wandered up to the bar and nudged me. "Hey man, you're killing it back here. Seriously, best margarita I've had at one of these stuffy things. Are you with a catering agency?" I looked at him for a beat too long. "You could say that." He nodded, completely missing the undertone. "Nice. Well, if you got a card, I'd love to bring you on for some private events." I smiled again, handed him a drink, and said, "You'll be hearing from me." 10 more minutes passed. I checked my watch. 9:15. I knew what was coming next. A surprise announcement Mira had hinted at for weeks. Something about deep appreciation for the people behind Darlington's success. The irony made my teeth ache. From the edge of the room, I spotted the event coordinator speaking with a Darlington director. She glanced toward me, toward the bartender, and I saw her nod. Time. I slipped off the vest, folded it neatly, and placed it behind the bar. Then I walked calmly toward the side door that led to the events operations office. I'd already coordinated with the real host weeks ago through a business associate who owed me a favor. All I had to do was give the signal. The lights dimmed slightly. A single mic illuminated on stage, and just like that, the room shifted again. The MC, a thin man in a velvet jacket, tapped the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special announcement this evening. A surprised guest. A man whose quiet investments helped birth what Darlington Group is today. The original believer. The one who funded the dream. Please welcome Mr. Julian Hart. The silence was thick, like the breath before thunder. I stepped out from the shadows, and Mira turned around. Her smile froze. Her hand clutched her glass like it might shatter. Gregory blinked twice. Julian Hart. He repeated as if trying to match the name to the man he'd seen pouring his drink 30 minutes ago. Mira laughed nervously. Wait. My husband just happens to share the same name. But I was already walking to the stage, already straightening my cufflinks, already halfway to the mic. The MC stepped back. I took the mic in one hand. The lights warmed my face. I looked around the room and let the silence stretch just long enough for people to shift uncomfortably. Thank you for the warm welcome, I said calmly, voice steady. And Mira, thank you for letting me help tonight. It's been illuminating. I smiled gently. The crowd was dead quiet, and that was only the beginning. The silence that followed my words wasn't the stunned kind. It was surgical, heavy, clean, like the room collectively forgot how to blink. Mira stood frozen near Gregory Lang, her eyes darting between me, the microphone, and the branded vest I had left, folded at the bar. For a woman who prided herself on controlling every narrative, she looked like someone who just realized the story had been rewritten without her permission and right under her nose. I let the silence hang a few more seconds, not because I was savoring the discomfort, though part of me was, but because silence has weight. And tonight, I needed every word to land like thunder. I scanned the faces in the crowd. Some looked confused, others amused. And then there were the few who began to realize they'd missed something important, like Kindra, who now wore a stunned kind of respect. The same way a gambler looks at someone who bluffed and won the pot with a pair of twos. Most of you know Merhart, I said, finally continuing Darlington Group's powerhouse. The face of innovation, the voice of vision, the relentless force behind the company's growth. And she deserves every bit of that recognition. But tonight isn't just about Mira. It's about all the people who built this foundation, those you know, and those you've never seen. I glanced at Gregory Lang. He wasn't smiling anymore. And if I may reintroduce myself, my name is Julian Hart. I'm not just Meyer's husband. I was the first investor in Darlington Group. I took a leap before your favorite seed round article hit TechCrunch. 8 years ago, when the pitch deck was made in PowerPoint and the business plan fit on a napkin, I believed. Murmurs swept through the room like wind through dry grass, the kind of noise that's more dangerous than a shout because it meant the audience was now alive, alert, awake. And Mira. Mira had gone pale. She still had the flute of champagne in her hand, but her fingers gripped it so tightly I was sure it would snap. Gregory took a step forward, his expression attempting a save. Wait, you Julian Hart? You're that Julian Hart? I gave him a tight nod. The very one. We've exchanged emails through intermediaries over the years. I never made it to the board meetings because, well, I didn't need a seat to steer a ship I already owned. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I didn't let him recover. Not yet. I've been content staying behind the curtain, watching this company grow, watching the team evolve, watching Mira shine. But I think it's time for some clarity. Tonight marks a new chapter. I've decided to expand Darlington Group's leadership team. Starting with a restructuring process, I believe will set us up for the next decade of scale. That was the real bomb, the restructuring. The kind of word that makes executives sweat and mid-level managers check their inboxes. The next morning, with trembling hands, I looked at Mira, then really looked at her. She was no longer performing. She wasn't posing, smiling, or calculating angles. Her eyes met mine, and behind them I saw fear, not of me, but of the truth. She had built an entire world pretending I was a footnote. And now she was realizing I had been the author all along. I'll be releasing a formal memo tomorrow, I said, lowering the mic just slightly. But tonight, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you. And to me, thank you for letting me help. The last line was deliberate. I even said it the way she'd said it earlier in the evening when she tossed me that branded vest like it was a towel for the help. I saw a few faces twitch, a few mouths cover poorly concealed grins. As I stepped off the stage, Mira took a step forward as if to intercept me, but her heel wobbled slightly. She was rattled, and the glass finally slipped from her hand. It shattered on the marble floor. The sound was sharp, sudden, a punctuation mark. Red wine spilled across her designer heels and spread like a stain she couldn't erase. Gasps rippled through the room. "Mira!" Kendra called, moving to help her. But Mira didn't move. She just stood there, hands still out, staring at the mess like it spoke louder than I did. Gregory made a show of trying to help, too. But his eyes were elsewhere on me, measuring, recalculating. "Julian," he said cautiously. "Had we known." I cut him off with a simple wave of my hand. "You'll get the memo in the morning." I kept walking. No fanfare, no gloating. Just the quiet certainty of someone who didn't need applause to know they'd won. As I passed the bar, the same young guy who'd asked if I catered private events gave me a stun. "Dude, you really undersold yourself." I shrugged, just blending in. Behind me, the party struggled to reboot. The music stuttered. Someone tried to restart a toast, but the mood had shifted. The illusion had shattered right alongside Meyer's glass. Outside, the air was cooler than I remembered. Crisp, clean. I unbuttoned the jacket I'd worn under the vest and walked toward my car parked a few blocks down. I didn't need a limo or a chauffeur. I needed distance, perspective. As I slid into the driver's seat, my phone buzzed. A text from Mira. What the hell was that? I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words, but because for the first time in a long time, silence wasn't something I had behind. It was a message all its own. There's something fascinating about watching a lie crumble in real time. It doesn't fall all at once like in the movies. No, it buckles at the corners first. Hairline fractures you only notice if you're paying close enough attention, if you've lived in the shadow of the lie long enough to recognize its flaws. That night, Myra's lie cracked wide open the moment that glass slipped from her hand and shattered against the marble floor. The red wine, Merlot. I think he spread slowly across her shoes, her hem, the pristine tile. like a stain blooming in silence. No one rushed to mop it up. No one said a word for what felt like a full minute. Just eyes all on her, and by extension on me. I didn't turn back. I didn't gloat or stay to see who would offer her a napkin or awkwardly whisper support into her ear. The moment was over. My message had been delivered, and now the real work would begin. The next morning, I showed up at the Darlington Group offices. Not through the back elevator or side conference room, but through the front entrance with the name Julian Hart already updated on the building's access panel. The security guard gave me a look like he recognized me, but couldn't place me. I smiled and nodded. "Good morning," I said, heading to the 24th floor. It was 8:32 a.m. Mara usually arrived closer to 9 East. I wanted the first 30 minutes. I wanted the quiet before the office figured out who I was. I walked through the open concept space filled with glass partitions and steel accents, passing assistants who greeted me like I was a new vendor or a very overdressed IT guy. In the executive wing, I found her office. Door closed, blinds drawn, her name still engraved on the brushed metal plate outside. Mara Hart, Executive Vice President. I took a breath, tapped the door once with the back of my knuckles, and entered without waiting for permission. She was there early for once, still in the same heels from the night before, but with a blazer thrown over a silk blouse. No makeup. I swollen from a night of unanswered questions in a mirror she likely didn't enjoy facing. "You had no right," she said before I even fully stepped inside. I closed the door gently behind me. I had every right. "You ambushed me." "I corrected the record," I replied, walking toward the desk. I didn't sit. I wanted her to feel the full weight of my presence. "You embarrassed me in front of my team, in front of my boss, in front of the same people you let believe I was a bartender." Her mouth opened, then closed. She stood slowly, her hands braced on the edge of the desk, like she needed to steady herself. "I didn't mean to. It wasn't supposed to go that far." "No, I said it wasn't supposed to go public." Mara turned away, walked to the window like she couldn't handle the way I was looking at her. I used to love watching her when she stood like that. Strong back, chin slightly up, like the city was hers to command. But now it looked like someone bracing against the inevitable. This was my job, Julian, my place. You should have let me handle it. "And what exactly were you handling?" I asked quietly. "Your image, your lie." It wasn't a lie. "He doesn't understand my world." I quoted, "You said that to Gregory. To your friends, you told them I was lucky just to be invited." She turned then slowly, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name shame. Maybe her fury. Sometimes they look the same on someone who's been exposed. "You made me look weak." "No, Mara," I said calmly. "You made me look weak for years. And I let you because I loved you. Because I wanted to see you win, even if I had to lose." Quietly. She stepped closer. "So what now? You're going to kick me out? Strip everything away? What? Fire me in front of the company?" I reached into my coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. Set it on the desk. "I'm offering you a role in community outreach. Entry level. A chance to rebuild." Her laugh was bitter. "You're demoting me? I'm giving you a choice." I said, "You can walk away or you can stay and learn what it means to build from the ground up like I did. Like we all had to." She stared at the envelope like it was radioactive. "This is petty." "No," I replied. "This is balance. You were the face of this company, Mirror. Now I need someone to be its heart." She shook her head, stepping back like she couldn't believe any of this was real. "You can't be serious. You start Monday." And with that, I turned and walked out. The reaction spread through the building before noon. No memo was needed. Eyes followed me now, respectful, curious. The smirks were gone. Even Gregory Lang's assistant sent over a meeting request titled Private Follow-Up with Mr. Hart. For once, no one laughed when they said my name. Later that evening, I received a call from one of the partners I'd helped recruit during the Series B funding round. He congratulated me, told me how long he'd waited for this shift. "It's poetic," he said. "She kept saying you were in consulting. Well, this is the most brilliant consultation I've ever seen." I hung up and stood in the middle of the foyer at home. Mira wouldn't be coming back there, not the same way. She'd signed the deed over in our early years, back when we were building a future instead of a brand. I walked past the pictures she'd hung, past the awards she displayed, and straight to the wall of family photos. There she was. Mirror in Paris, mirror at the launch party, mirror at the ribbon cutting, center stage in every frame. I didn't take them down. I just replaced the center photo with one of the company's original team. A blurry, grainy image taken in a rented office space with pizza boxes in the background and joy on our faces. Mira wasn't in it. She hadn't even shown up to that shoot. Said she was too busy working on her own future. And now she'd finally caught up to it. On Monday, she'd walk into Darlington's main building. No heels, no boardroom, just a cubicle and a purpose. And for the first time in years, maybe she'd start seeing what she lost while chasing what she thought she needed. The drive back from the office was quiet. I took the long route, not because I wanted more time to think, but because silence had become its own kind of bomb. No podcasts, no music, just the steady hum of the tires on pavement and the gentle reminder that for once the world wasn't asking me to rush. Mira had left earlier through a side exit. She didn't want to face anyone else that day, not after our conversation in her office. Not after that envelope slid across the desk like a verdict. I didn't blame her, but I didn't feel sorry for her either. The mansion stood still when I pulled into the circular driveway. The lights were off, the curtains drawn. Myra's car was parked out front like always. But this time, she didn't wait inside with a glass of wine and a strange smile. She sat on the front steps in that silver blazer from earlier, her heels in her hands, bare feet on the stone. I parked, killed the engine, and just watched her through the windshield for a moment. The powerful executive who once commanded stages and boardrooms now looked like a woman who didn't know which door to walk through. I got out and walked up slowly. She didn't look at me right away, just stared out toward the fountain, the sound of water echoing in the night. "You changed the locks?" she asked quietly. "No," I replied. "Didn't see the need." She looked down at the heels in her lap. "It doesn't feel like mine anymore." "It never was," I said. Not crewy, just honestly. She flinched at that just slightly. But she didn't argue. "I found the envelope," she said. "The one in the drawer." I nodded. She meant the documents, the deed, the prenup, all the fine print she skimmed when we were younger, when I was just a sweet guy with vision. And she was too busy to care about the legal stuff. "You signed it," I said. "I know." We sat in silence for a moment. The kind of silence that swells with everything that hasn't been said, with years of smiles that masked frustration, with dinners where we chewed our food and bit our tongues. She rubbed her thumb against the heel of her shoe like she was trying to scrub something off it. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked. "That you own the house? That you own the company?" I took a breath. "Because you never asked. That's not fair." I turned to face her. "Isn't it?" When's the last time you looked at me without scanning for what didn't match your image? When did you last ask what I was building or what I wanted? She swallowed hard, eyes shining now in the porch light. I was trying to become something. I didn't want to be married to someone people pitied. And I didn't want to be married to someone who needed the world more than she needed the truth. I said, standing now. But we both made our choices. She stood too. So what now? You're kicking me out? No, I said you're free to stay for now, but not in our bedroom. I'll be in the guest house. She blinked. You're serious? I nodded. 30 days. That's what the clause says. That's what you gave me. Her face crumpled just slightly. That was never supposed to apply to us. Neither was a marriage where I wore a vest and poured drinks while my wife pretended not to know me. Her eyes filled then, but no tears fell. Mira wasn't one to cry in public, even when the public was just me. I wanted you to be proud of me, she whispered. I just didn't think you'd do it like this. I didn't reply. I stepped past her, unlocked the door, and held it open. She walked in slowly. The house felt different now, colder, like it had inhaled too much truth to go back to pretending. Inside, she paused near the entryway, staring at the large canvas photo we'd hung the year after our honeymoon. Mirror on the cliffs in Santorini, arms wide, hair caught in the wind. I wasn't in the frame. She'd said it looked cleaner that way, more timeless. I've been so scared, she said softly, not facing me, of losing everything. I set my keys on the table. Then you should have thought about what everything really meant. She turned to me then raw and stripped down. No armor, no makeup, no audience. I don't want to be your enemy, Julian. I don't need you to be, I said. But I also don't need you to be my ghost. She didn't respond, just walked toward the stairs, heels still in hand, her bare feet making soft thuds on the hardwood. I watched her go. That night, I stayed in the guest house. It was quiet. No footsteps above, no echo of her laugh from the kitchen. I laid on the smaller bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering how a home can stay so still while everything inside it breaks. In the morning, she was already gone when I walked back to grab some files. Her coffee mug sat in the sink, lipstick faint on the rim, a small act of normalcy in a house that no longer had any. I looked around the living room, the throw pillows she obsessed over, the curated stack of books on the table, the candles she never lit. And I realized something. This place was never a home. It was a stage. Now the show was over, and I was the one holding the script. Mara tried charm first. I knew she would. That's the version of her people loved. Polished, poised, persuasive. 3 days after I moved into the guest house, she came to the door with a tray of croissants, fresh coffee, and that slight arch to her brow that used to mean something far more intimate than breakfast. She knocked gently like she wasn't the woman who'd spent years minimizing my presence in her life. Thought you might want something warm, she said when I opened the door. She wore a soft robe, not the silk one she'd parade around in, but the cotton one, the one she used to wear when she curled up beside me to read. I let her in, sat across from her at the small table. The croissants were from her favorite French bakery. She never used to let me eat pastries without some comment about carbs. Now she was offering me too. We talked sort of small things. How quiet the house had felt lately, how the mail had been building up. I let her fill the space with pleasantries while I waited for the turn, the reason she'd come. I've been thinking, she finally said, maybe we could reevaluate the role you assigned me. There it was. I didn't even blink. Community outreach is a vital role. She smiled tightly. Julian, come on. You know it's entry level. You think I belong there? I think it's a good place to start, I said calmly. You said you wanted to rebuild. Start here. I said I wanted to fix things with you, not run the alumni newsletter. You said you wanted respect, I said, pushing the tray slightly away. Respect doesn't come from titles, Mira. It comes from truth. Her mouth hardened, but she stood and nodded, gathering the tray like she hadn't really come for conversation at all. She paused at the door. You think humiliating me makes you strong? No, I said. I think giving you a second chance makes me kind. She didn't come back the next day. Instead, she tried seduction. I came home late from a board dinner and found her in the living room, lights dimmed, wearing the same red dress she wore the night I first told her I loved her. Music played softly. Sam Cooke, one of my favorites. She turned, holding a glass of wine, that practiced smile on her lips. Remember this dress? She asked. I nodded. I remember the woman in it. She moved toward me slowly, hand grazing my arm. She's still here, just lost her way for a bit. I stepped back gently, not cruelly. Mara, you said once that love shouldn't need to be proven, that if someone really sees you, they won't ask for performance. I believe that. Her face faltered. So what now? You're just done with me. I'm done being someone you used to make yourself look complete. Her expression shattered then, and I saw it for the first time. Not the anger, not the pride, but the fear underneath. The version of Mira who wasn't composed or in charge. Just the woman who was terrified that all her image-making had left her standing alone in a house filled with mirrors. She didn't say anything else that night. But 2 days later, the rage arrived. It came sharp, unfiltered, and without ceremony. I was walking into the Darlington building when she caught up to me at the elevator. You made a fool of me, she said, eyes wild. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I let the elevator doors close before I answered. No, Ma. I just stopped shielding you from the reflection. She pointed a finger at me. You wanted to ruin me. Don't pretend this was noble. If I wanted to ruin you, I said slowly, you'd already be out of this company, out of that house, and out of every social circle that still returns your calls. I gave you grace. You just never recognized it. She didn't follow me upstairs. Instead, that afternoon, her nameplate was quietly removed from the boardroom wall. No announcement, no ceremony, just gone. A few of the staff noticed, whispering about it near the elevators. Kendra, in particular, looked like she didn't know which side to land on anymore. 1 minute, she was gushing over Myra's leadership. The next, she was complimenting my vision in meetings. By the end of the week, Mira reported to a new desk. No window, no assistant, no private lounge access, just a workstation near the interns, a phone line, and a company email account that no longer auto-forwarded to the executive server. And the photos, that was the final unraveling. Darlington had a wall, what they called the legacy calendar, a row of framed photos showing key milestones, key players. Mira was in 8 of them. Launch parties, press tours, award galas, always front and center, always mid-laugh, hand on someone's shoulder like she owned the room. I ordered new prints. The design team was quiet when I gave the directive. They didn't ask questions. They just nodded and returned a few hours later with a box. I stood in the hallway myself when they took the old frames down. I held them in my hands. Saw the woman I once loved in every picture. Beautiful, commanding, alone. Even when she was surrounded by people, I kept one. The very first one before the PR makeover, before the tailored speeches. She was smiling genuinely in that photo, head tilted, hair messy, holding a clipboard, and laughing at something off camera. I slipped it into a drawer in my office. When Mira walked by the wall later that day, she stopped. She stared at the new calendar, new faces, new moments. Her absence was loud. She turned slowly and caught my eye through the glass door. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just nodded once and kept walking. That night, I stood in the hallway of the house as she packed more boxes. She wasn't rushing, just folding dresses she no longer wore and jewelry she hadn't touched since the gala. She saw me there, leaning on the doorframe. I wanted people to respect me, she said, and I became someone I didn't even respect. I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. She picked up a small velvet box. Our wedding bands. She opened it and stared for a moment before closing it again. "Do you still see me, Julian?" she asked. "I always did," I said. "You just stopped seeing yourself." Then I stepped aside. She walked past me slow and quiet. That night, I slept harder than I had in years. Not because it was easy, but because, for the first time, the silence didn't feel like hiding. It felt like healing. Mira didn't leave right away. She lingered like perfume in a closed room, still present, still clinging to the air, but fading more each day. Her suitcases stayed stacked by the front door for a week. Not packed sloppily, but arranged like decor. Almost like she was waiting for someone to ask her to stay, for someone to tell her it wasn't really over. But no one did. Not me. Not the neighbors who used to gush over her garden parties. Not the friends who once begged for invitations and reposted every curated moment from our lives. The house which she had once moved through like royalty, heels clacking confidently against marble silk robes trailing behind her, felt different now. It was quieter, more still. She wandered from room to room like a visitor. She stopped making noise when she walked, like even her footsteps were apologizing. And she'd started doing something new, pretending. She'd step out onto the balcony with her phone pressed to her ear, pacing, nodding dramatically. But when I passed by one day and her phone lit up, screen dark, no call in progress, I knew it was all for show. She didn't want the neighbors to see her fall. She wanted to look busy, wanted to look important. But importance doesn't survive silence. And the silence in that house had become deafening. She kept trying to reclaim parts of it. Rearranging pillows, buying new candles, fixing the fresh flowers that used to arrive every Monday. But they all wilted now. She'd throw them out and replace them again and again. Like she could cheat decay if she just arranged things beautifully enough. I didn't interfere. I stayed in the guest house, made my coffee there, did my calls from there. It had everything I needed. Peace, space, and the ability to watch Mira realize in real time that power isn't about who people believe you are. It's about who you are when there's no one left to perform for. One evening, I walked into the main house to grab some old project files I'd kept in the study. She was sitting on the stairs barefoot, hugging her knees like a child, trying to disappear into herself. She didn't look up at first, just sat there staring at the floor. "I got a call from Kendra today," she said quietly. I paused halfway to the study. "Yeah." She asked if I was coming to the Founders Circle dinner next month, and I asked. She said she assumed I wouldn't. Then she mentioned you're giving the keynote. That didn't surprise me. I hadn't announced it. The committee had they wanted someone who had built from the roots, not someone who had borrowed the fruit. I fit that theme better now. Mira didn't argue. She wanted to know if we were still close, Mira added. I didn't know what to say. I sat on the stair opposite her, a few steps down. "We're not enemies," I said. "But we're not pretending anymore either." She nodded, eyes flicking to a framed picture on the wall above us. It was the one of us in Cape Town, laughing, wind in our hair, the sea behind us. She got that photo blown up after it made a splash on her social media feed. Thousands of likes, dozens of comments, couples' goals. And yet, I remembered that trip differently. I remembered her glued to her phone the whole time. I remembered the fights between the photos. "You used to smile like that," she whispered. "I still do," I said, "just not with an audience." She looked away then, biting her lip to stop it from trembling. "I used to think this house meant we'd made it." She said that if I could just walk through the front door and feel the marble under my feet, I'd know I wasn't her anymore. Her. My mother, she said. The woman who couldn't pay the mortgage, who cried in the kitchen with the lights off because she was scared someone would see her fall apart. I promised myself I'd never be her. And instead I asked. "I became someone else I don't recognize," she said. "Someone who doesn't cry in the dark because she doesn't cry at all." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. She stood up slowly, brushing off her sweatpants like they were made of silk. "I'm leaving Sunday," she said. 30 days are almost up." I nodded. She turned to walk away, but paused again. "I won't take anything that isn't mine." "That would be the first time," I said before I could stop myself. She didn't flinch, just nodded like she deserved that one, and maybe more. On Saturday, the movers came. Not the expensive ones she used to brag about, the ones with monogrammed uniforms and GPS-tracked crates. Just a simple team with a dented van and gloves that had seen too many stairwells. She gave them instructions, boxed everything herself. No tears, no ceremony. I watched from the window of the guest house as she packed the last box into the trunk of her car. She stood there for a moment with her hand on the roof, staring back at the mansion. Not like she was sad, but like she was confused about where the years had gone. Like she'd arrived at the wrong destination and only just realized she was the one driving the whole time. She walked up to the porch, knocked once on the guest house door. When I opened it, she handed me something small, the old house key worn, Vince slightly near the teeth. "I don't need this anymore." She said it was never mine. "Really?" I took it, nodded once. "You'll be okay." "I hope so," she said. "But this time, I want to be okay for the right reasons." She walked away, didn't look back. The gate clicked shut behind her like a chapter ending. No fanfare, no applause, just the low growl of her car engine disappearing down the road. That night, I stepped into the main house again. It was still furniture untouched, pillows fluffed, but the air was different. No scent of her perfume, no soft echo of heels on the marble, just the space, the bones, the foundation. I walked to the wall where she used to tape up her vision boards. There were still faint pieces of old Scotch tape, like ghosts of ambition. I peeled one off and smiled. Maybe she'd come back one day, not to live, but to visit different. Oh, maybe not. But for the first time in years, the house finally felt like mine. And more importantly, so did I. I didn't want to do the interview. Not at first. The producer, a soft-voiced woman named Elise with a talent for timing, reached out 3 times before I finally agreed. "Just a conversation," she'd said on the phone. "Not a scandal expose, just your story." I'd laughed when she said that. My story? For years, no one had even asked my name at events unless it was to confirm Myra's husband had parked correctly. But something about the way she said it, the invitation without pressure, stuck with me. And after everything had unfolded, I figured maybe it was time I stopped whispering my truth and said it aloud. We recorded in a small studio tucked away in the city's West End. Nothing flashy, just 2 chairs, a mic between us, and a camera crew that barely made a sound. I wore a plain navy sweater, no tailored suits, no watch flex. I wanted this to feel real, grounded, not a performance. Elise started soft, asked about my background, my early days working odd jobs to save for seed investments. She was good at what she did, listened with intent, steered the conversation gently, and for the first 30 minutes, it was like a dam opened. I talked about building in silence, about risking everything on Darlington when all I had was instinct and an unshakable belief in the product. I talked about the people who told me I was crazy, about the months I lived off Kent soup and stretch-thin rent, about how every success Mira claimed as her own had started in my late-night spreadsheets. Then came the part she'd been circling from the start. "And your marriage?" she asked gently. There's been a lot of talk recently about what went on behind the scenes. I didn't flinch. I took a breath, nodded. "I loved her," I said. "Let's start there. I loved Mira when we had nothing but hope. I loved her through every stage of becoming, even when she started to disappear behind the version of herself she thought the world wanted." Elise leaned forward slightly. "So why keep everything secret for so long? Your role, your ownership, your influence? Why stay in the shadows?" I looked at the floor, then back up at her. "Because I wanted to see who'd love me when I had nothing to prove." That was the line. I didn't know it at the time, but when the episode dropped 3 days later, that was the clip that went viral. That sentence cut with perfect timing, my voice low, the music swelling underneath it, landed like a quiet truth in a world of noise. It started on Twitter, then Instagram, then LinkedIn of all places. Some people build with you, others just pose for the pictures. Another clip, another wave. The views passed 10,000, then 50, then 100. Comments poured in from young founders, from husbands, from women who said they'd never considered the quiet one in the relationship before. Suddenly, I wasn't just Julian Hart, the man behind the money. I was a symbol of quiet strength, of reclamation, of someone who didn't need to scream to be heard. My inbox flooded. Podcasts, TEDx talks, investment forums. People wanted more of the man who watched from the background, then walked into the frame without raising his voice. Mira saw it too. I knew she would. The internet doesn't let you look away, not when you're still on its radar. She texted me the morning the clip hit 3.2 million views. I deserve that. Just those words, no defenses, no sarcasm. I stared at the message for a while before I responded. "You deserve the truth. I just finally gave it to you out loud." She didn't reply, but a few hours later, I received a package at the guest house. No note, just the framed photo from our Santorini trip, the one that used to hang in the main hallway. She must have taken it with her when she left. But now it was back. I didn't hang it up. I didn't throw it away either. I stored it in a box in my closet. A reminder, not of her, but of what happens when you let silence replace sincerity. 2 weeks later, I hosted a charity gala. It was the same type of event Mira used to dominate. Elegant, high profile, full of people who measure worth in net figures and applause volume. But this one was different. I didn't want glamour. I wanted intention. We raised $600,000 for underserved youth programs in tech. I poured drinks that night too, just for a few minutes, just for fun. One of the guests, a CFO from a Fortune 500 company, raised a glass and said, "You're the CEO with the steady pour, huh?" I laughed, something like that. And then someone else said, "You made silence a strategy." But it wasn't a strategy. Not really. It was survival. It was patience. It was knowing that not all storms require thunder. Some just need time. After the event, I stepped out onto the rooftop terrace, the city glittering below. Elise joined me. She smiled, sipping a club soda. "You changed a lot of minds with that interview," she said. "I didn't mean to," I replied. "I just stopped protecting the lie." She nodded. Sometimes that's all it takes. A few feet away, someone was playing a slow jazz set, the kind of music that makes you feel like things might turn out all right, even after everything's fallen apart. And in that moment, I realized something. This peace, this clarity, this ability to stand in a room and feel full without needing to dominate it. That was mine. I had earned it. Not through revenge, not through dominance, through presence, through truth, and finally, through voice. The first Monday after the interview aired, I walked through the front doors of Darlington Group, not with a performance in mind, but with purpose in my chest. There were no flashing cameras or fanfare, just people, employees, interns, executives, who now looked at me a little differently. Not with fear, not with exaggerated admiration, but with the kind of quiet, level respect that lands only after the truth settles into people's bones. I passed by the reception desk. Lisa, the front desk manager, gave me a wide smile and a coffee I hadn't even asked for. "Black, 2 sugars, right?" she said. I nodded, grateful, and continued toward the elevator. On the ride up, a junior product manager leaned in slightly and said, "I saw the clip, the one about silence. My dad sent it to me. Said, this is what integrity looks like." I thanked him without making it awkward. That was the thing now. I didn't need to explain myself. The story had already done that. People finally saw me for who I was, and ironically, it was by not trying to be seen that they noticed. When I stepped off on the executive floor, I passed the conference room where Myra's photo once hung. The new board wall looked clean, honest, balanced. Some of the original staff had been restored to it. Faces who'd done the heavy lifting behind the curtain for years without applause. I told the team we were resetting the culture. "No more crown chasers," I'd said in the last executive meeting. "Only builders." I reached my office and settled into the chair behind the glass desk. The skyline draped behind me like a reward, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt present, and that was more valuable than anything else. Later that afternoon, we hosted a mid-quarter town hall in the Central Lounge. There were nearly 200 employees on site that day, with more dialed in remotely. The entire room had a different energy now. Not nervous, not transactional, but open. I walked on stage without a cue, without scripted notes, just a stool, a mic, and a glass of water. "I used to stand in the back of these rooms," I said. Not because I was shy, but because I believed the loudest person wasn't always the wisest. I still believe that. But silence, real silence, is only meaningful when it's not hiding truth. They were still attentive, not because they feared me, but because they understood the weight of what had happened. The kind of transformation that doesn't come from quarterly results, but from accountability. "I won't waste your time with fluff," I continued. "We're restructuring how we value people here. Titles will mean less. Execution will mean more. Image will matter less. Integrity more. And every department will have a direct line to leadership, not through filters, not through applause, through substance." I took a breath and smiled. Now that said, the wine at the holiday party will still be excellent. That got a laugh. A real one. I ended with this. I believe in quiet strength, but let me be clear. If you ever feel unseen in this company, speak. Your voice matters. And if no one listens, come find me. I promise I will. The applause that followed didn't feel like fanfare. It felt like agreement, like trust. After the town hall, I wandered into the event prep space where staff were organizing for a charity auction we were sponsoring the next weekend. I picked up a tray, helped move some folding chairs, and cracked a few jokes with the volunteers. They seemed caught off guard at first. The CEO was handing out name tags and adjusting light settings. But I liked it that way. I liked reminding people that leadership doesn't float above. It walks among. That evening, we held a private fundraiser in the rooftop lounge. Only key investors, board members, and a few select guests were invited. I wore a simple black blazer, no tie, no cufflinks, just a bottle of wine in hand, and the easy confidence of a man who no longer had anything to prove. I made the rounds, poured drinks, laughed lightly with the old school board members who used to mistake me for Myra's assistant. Gregory Lang came up to me midway through, drinking hand, looking unsure whether to smile or stand at attention. "Julian," he said. That was quite a month. I raised my glass. "Clarity usually is." He chuckled weakly. "I underestimated you." "I know," I said. "That's what made it work." He nodded and walked off. That was enough closure for me. Just before the night ended, I found myself alone at the bar with one of the new scholarship interns, a 19-year-old named Darnell from Brooklyn. He'd been shadowing the product team all month and asked to meet me. "I watched your interview 3 times, he said. "The way you said, some people build with you. Others just pose for the pictures. Man, that hit. My mom cried watching it." I smiled at him. That line wasn't meant to hurt anyone, just to remind myself what kind of man I want to be. He looked down. "I want to be that kind too." "You already are," I told him. "Just keep listening and don't let silence turn into self-eraser." He nodded slowly, then smiled like he'd been handed something bigger than advice. I stayed after everyone else left. Cleared a few glasses, tossed napkins. The bartender tried to stop me, said, "Mr. Hart, we've got this." But I shook my head and kept wiping the counter because I remembered what it felt like to pour for a room that laughed at me. And now I poured for the memory. Not out of revenge, out of return, out of full circle. That night, I walked back into my home, my actual home. The air felt different now, balanced, no tension hiding in the corners. I poured myself a single glass of wine and sat on the back porch, the city lights flickering behind the hedges. I thought about Mara, not with hate, not even with sadness, just with clarity. We'd written a long chapter together, but I was writing a new one now. And this one was mine from the first word.